we have, it could possibly be a sensitive topic to some, but I think it's necessary as international news is. So it doesn't matter where you are, once you are in news in diaspora, at some point you'll likely face some sort of, whether it's prejudice, racism, or just, difficult patients. So, as two nurses who are international nurses, we thought we'd just compile some tips that may help new international nurses face racism or difficult patients, how to manage it. So, yeah, that will be our topic for today. So, stay tuned if you're interested in hearing about it. So I have 14 tips. Persons who are experiencing this, you could feel free. Let's have a discussion. Comment your experiences or tips, things that you've done to just manage with this. So first thing I'd say is to accept it. It is gonna happen, right? I think being in denial and thinking, like all butterflies and sunshine and rainbows and things are always gonna be perfect. It will not always be perfect. There'll always be someone who, you know, may not like you based on your appearance, your accent. It could be for many different reasons. So just being okay, it's okay, it's fine, it doesn't define you. And chances are, out of 80% of your patients, 20% may be difficult patients. So instead of just continuously saying racism, we'll just say difficult, right? So persons who treat you differently, or it's just difficult to provide care for them because, of that energy or things they may say, things they may do. So tip number one, I would say, is communication. I have found that communication has been like the singular most effective way to deal with any type of difficult patients or staff members, colleagues, relatives, family members. I think that clear communication is like the mecca. Yeah, it is the mecca. So you introduce yourself, right? You now take on shift, you introduce yourself. So, and you always explain everything. So, hi, I am Miss, let's say, Miss George, and I'll be your niece for today. And X, Y, and Z. Anything you're going to do, if you're busy, you'd say, well, um, so let's say they want you to make up their beds right now. You're doing medication rounds, but you know that your auxiliary staff is also busy. You just explain to them, I'm doing this right now. Is it okay if I come back, at this time to do this for you? Like communication has always, been that one thing that, could pacify a situation per se. Next, I'd say is to call the patient by their preferred name. A lot of persons here like to be called nicknames. So instead of saying William, they prefer to be called Billy. And nothing aggravates a patient more than you are calling them their whole government name and they have their preferred names. So in the hospital that we work at, there's a whiteboard in each of the patient's room. And on that, you would put what they would prefer to be called by. So just that extra effort in terms of when you go into the room, just have a glance and just say, okay, oh, Andrew prefers to be called Andy. Okay, so hi Andy, how are you today? That little difference, yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's good. That's good information. And they also love to talk. I think communication is one of the big things across here. They love to have conversations. Now, football is one of the main topics, but I wouldn't get into it because everybody have their own team. So I'm not going to call no team name here, but yeah, they love to talk about football, and they also like to talk about traveling. So They will
There's
even
two
ask
nice
you where
topics
you're
there.
from,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
if
yeah.
you highlight where you're from, they will like to have conversations about if they travel to that area or not, or they
Yeah,
would
yeah,
like to.
yeah. That does be
So
a nice like conversation piece as well. So instead of just you just come in and you just start doing stuff, like having an actual conversation with patients, you'd see that they sometimes they if they are tense initially, they tend to relax and oh, you're from the Caribbean, whereabouts? And they like ask questions. They're so interested now. So yeah,
yeah, but one thing they always like to say, if you're from Jamaica,
yeah.
because I think that's one of the most common spoke languages that they identify as the Caribbean. I guess because of movies and soca, well, reggae and so forth. So nothing to be worried about. They will just class it as that at the beginning, but you could just break it down and tell them, well, yeah, we are from the same area, but I'm a Trini.
Next one is to dress professionally and be aware of body odors. I think this is a cultural thing where you'd find some cultures it's sensitive. So just we already told you that this was going to be a sensitive video, right? There's some cultures who tend to have a bit more like body odor, but it's just normal for their culture. Maybe they don't wear deodorants and whatnot. Now, when you're moving to different country, there's some things that you just have to be aware of and adapt to. And being in someone's personal space and their, offensive odors, that could, just rub them the wrong way. So whether it is, oral care or just body hygiene on a whole, and also just dressing professionally, like your scrubs, have it looking neat. Like when someone is neatly dressed and smelling really nice, like you automatically like your perception about them is a bit better. When they're like disheveled, ramful, just looking really creased or a bit smelly, like so your patients when you enter in their personal space and providing care for them, you want to look your best, right? So I think that is one thing. And I think it's to actually be pleasant.
Yeah,
Sometimes a lot of person has like resting bitch face, excuse my language, right? So and our tone of voice tends to sometimes come across a bit aggressive, even when we're not aggressive. So we could appear angry, or sometimes somebody might look at you and like smiler, you know. So I think like being pleasant, even if it doesn't come naturally to you, just making that extra effort to be more pleasant, right? Being warmer, pleasant would eventually, just warm up to you. Number five, yeah, so involve patients and their family in terms of their care. So that's like patient being autonomous. So I like to give the patients and family options, ask questions. So how did you find this went, or how is your day going so far? Even the family members, if they're very involved in the care, how do you find your relative is going today? Just involve them. What do they like to eat? What they like, so just involve them in their care as much as possible. It helps them to feel respected. It helps them to just feel like a human being. Being in the hospital is a very emotional experience, and it strips away your dignity and all of that. So if there's a nurse who's doing that, even though there's a foreign nurse, you'd feel like more welcomed and more, appreciated by that nurse.
next thing, when family members come to visit the patient, sometimes they may highlight that the patient might be confused or not acting how they usually act. That is a good telltale sign that the patient might not be doing too well also.
So
So
acknowledge any
yeah,
the relative
acknowledging,
concerns. Because I think it's a training thing where we would ignore person's concerns. I would be like, nah, nah, no more, thing like acknowledge person's concerns, like their relatives are with them 24/7. 24/7. And I don't think in nursing in our country relatives are as involved in care as, here. So you'd find like a lot of visitations, a lot of so just be open to the fact that you'd have not just your patients to be your patients, but family members will also become your patients as well. So you just have
yeah,
to involve them. Back home we I think we tend to be a bit mean to family members, and even outside of business hours, like It's not visiting hours yet, We had to be a bit be only one visitor, only two visitors, Here you could go in and there's like 10 persons in the room. Alright. So what I do when I go to the room, everybody get a good morning. I am this phone and sometimes I ask everybody name. I don't
Yeah.
remember. I ain't gonna remember shit. I ain't gonna remember their name. But I still ask us be like so even like if I have a patient and the husband there will be like, what's your name? And sometimes I try to remember, so okay, when I go back in, okay. And sometimes they even like to help. You're doing something and they want to be involved, they want to help. I'm like, thank you, Roger, that's really nice, thank you. Roger's not my patient, Janice is my patient, but I'm thanking Roger as well. So yeah. Next one is to be knowledgeable.
Yeah. You must be knowledgeable because they tend to know a lot about their medication, and they also always in tune with what's going on with themselves and their diagnoses. So don't run in the room and think you could just say anything you want and the patient will run with it. Some of them will pull up his socks right away and let you know, hey, that's not going on with me, is this what going on with me? And they know the medication, they know what time they get in the medication, how much tablets they own. You know they say this color tablet I own and that color tablet I own back
Back home.
home. Nah, here, no, this tablet
They know
is
more
not
about their
this.
stuff
This
than you.
tablet is this.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so make sure know your work, make
Yeah.
sure know your medication because they
And there's a
will pull you up.
level, yeah, there's a level of respect that someone gives someone who is very knowledgeable. So even though they may see you and not like you because you're different, from the time you start opening your mouth and they could hear knowledge just seeping out from you, they have no choice but to respect you. And that's
Yeah,
one thing I always tell my son, like someone could treat you anyhow they want to treat you, but to see your knowledge, they can't take that away from you. And they have to respect you. Like knowledge is, knowledge is power, guys. So be on top of your game with knowledge. And you'd find that even like you could be a resource person to other nurses once you're really knowledgeable, just keep working on building your competencies, skills, research, being current with practices and stuff, yeah.
yeah.
Next is to be courteous and to actually be interested. How many times persons ask you, how are you? And when you answer, they just go off on a different topic. Like, no one likes that. You feel like, why did you even ask me how I am? I told you I'm having a bad day, and you just go along talking about, whatever else. So, when I go in, I ask them, how are you? Oh, how was your night? And you build on that conversation. So, if they say they didn't have a good night, oh, sorry to hear that. What's the reason why? And, continue asking questions or is it was it a bit noisy, was it this, it just makes them feel valued, you know and try not to bring yourself into the situation. So sometimes person may ask you a question, you answer, that they start talking about themselves. Like, no, unless the patient specifically wants to know, like, more about, let's say, you, where you're from, different things. At that moment when you're, showing the courtesy and, being interested, like, ask them questions. So some of the questions that I asked, how was your morning? How was your night? Sometimes just to break the ice, like if there's a patient who seems like really distracted or maybe seems angry, and sometimes like it could be that they just don't want to be cared for by you. But sometimes I just ask them the question, did you come from far? Are you living nearby? Have you always lived in Liverpool? If you're not taking away the meals or whatever, meals was just say that ask, how was the meal, if they enjoyed it. And then that brings up another conversation of what they like to eat and whatnot. Have you always lived in this area? If they have photos in the room, you could, just ask like, oh, this is a nice photo. Is this your grandkids? Or, just, ask to just be interested. There are patients who would probably have pictures of their pets and they love, like they open up so much about their pets. They love speaking about their pets. um, I've I've actually started really interested conversations just based on tattoos. They like tattoos. So sometimes they'd have, a tattoo in their hand. I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. What does this mean? And then they'd just go on. I was explaining, and then they'd show me like different tattoos and tell me like, I got this one when I was, 19, and da 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 da. And yeah, it just brings up like different conversations.
Yeah, all that being said, just be mindful. If it's a male nurse, be careful if you're asking female patients this, however.
Oh yeah,
So if it's male to male conversation, yeah, no problem. If it's male to female, be a little more lenient on the type of conversation that you create. Okay, you don't want to be looked at as somebody that is trying to pick up or groom
yeah, yeah,
someone,
yeah. That's true.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
So number 8 is be prompt with concerns. So whether they say, they're cool, offer a solution. Don't just, oh okay, and you just go along. Like offer solutions to their problems. So they're cool, offer them an extra blankets. Would you like a hot cup of tea? If they have pain, offer them pain medication. If they're not on anything, just say, well, I'll see if I could escalate and ask the doctor to prescribe you something. Just try to
yeah,
solve a problem, right? Yeah. Number 9 is to be honest. So you're not going on kiss ass, all the time. You just sometimes you could, be honest. I think sometimes when you probably misjudge something, I wouldn't say like outright a mistake, or sometimes, they may ask for something and you bring the wrong thing. You just be honest, oh sorry, I really didn't hear you, I didn't understand, or whatever, or I can't do this right now. Just being honest comes a long way.
right. So number 10 is to be confident and maintain eye contact. Now, when you're dealing with the patients, it's really important to be confident because they could smell your fear. They could
It's a
smell
dog
your
one.
fear. And basically, if you're not, sometimes they tend to treat you a little off, I
Yeah,
should
yeah.
say.
I think some of them is sass you. Especially
Yeah,
when they look at different and you are the minority, they try to kind of test you to see you. But if you come in with confidence and maintain eye contact and you are assertive, right? And it also comes with your boundaries and your territory. So you being pleasant, but you're not going to be walked over as well. I deserve to be here just as much as all the other nurses, right? I'm employed here just as all the other nurses. So just being confident, because I feel like sometimes at some point we've probably all been through this where you didn't really feel welcomed and you go into spaces just, being shy and small and just try to minimize yourself, right? But to really manage with these type of situations, to flourish and to overcome like difficult patients or even, prejudice, you have to just, your confidence has to come from you, and you have to display your confidence. Accept that you will not always be liked, which we talked about initially. So
yeah.
sometimes you do all of these things and a patient would still,
Not
say,
like you,
yeah, yeah.
basically. They
They
just wouldn't
they
like
could
you.
even be like explicit, like I ain't want no and taking care of me. And you know what? It's fine. Because there's some situations that you just have no control over, and that is fine. There's some patients who have like dementia, different, mental health conditions, and your interventions wouldn't make a difference, and there's nothing that you could do to change their perception or how they treat you or whatever. And just don't take it personal. Don't take it
Yeah.
personal. How unfair is it that you have 80 patients who treat you nicely and one patient, So let's say you have 6 patients. There's one who isn't treating you very well. Other 5 is treating you fine, and you base your entire day just on one patient. So you treat your other patients horribly just because of this one patient making you feel bad. No. So just accept that. Okay, well, this patient doesn't like me. It's okay. You do what you could do. If that patient wants to, be reassigned to a different nurse, and your facility is willing to accommodate that, likely, they just have to manage with, you for now. um Next one is ask if they would prefer anything specific and respect their decisions.
Yeah, I think we don't cover that already in
Yeah,
that
I
kind of
think
way.
we cover, yeah.
Anyway, let me wrap it up. Let me go and get in train.
Wrap it up, wrap it up, wrap it up. So yeah, that is the end of that. So guys,
Oh,
all my international nurses, if you have more tips, so comment, let us know if you have any stories, if you have, any tidbits, any questions as well, let us know. So thank you guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye. Lovely little rugrat.
Hi, Auntie.
Hello, how are you?
Hello.
How was school today?